Other than your motor vehicle, your next biggest expenses is the gear that you wear. You need to make sure that you're wearing top quality gear so that your season can go ahead without any hiccups. And of course, everybody likes a little bit of stylish gear every now and then, but is it practical? Does it do its job? Because you owe it to yourself and you owe it to your clients. Well guys, today I'll be sharing with you 3 boots that have made it past a couple of years in training, and I look forward to putting these guys to the sword and seeing which boots come out on top for our industry, and as well as becoming a professional hunter. So without further ado, let's get into it. Well guys, like mentioned, boots are definitely one of the more important aspects to any professional hunter's gear. Putting them through ultimate tests and understanding what the actual purpose is extremely important. Something that I've learned, especially over the past couple of years since I've taken up bow hunting, is how important a real specific boot is, not only for traction, but silence, and as well as comfort. Spending hours and hours and hours per day on your feet, comfort has become extremely important. So, do all these shoes tick the right boxes? I thought it was only fair that I put the 3 boots that have made it more than one season through the test. The others, unfortunately, I had a lot of really cool boots like rugged, redbacks, all of that sort of stuff, and unfortunately they just didn't quite make the cut. However, like I said before in previous podcasts, none of these boot manufacturers or Vellie manufacturers have endorsed me thus far, but I thought it was only fair, being a professional hunter and being passionate about the outdoor industry, to give my personal opinion on what will be the best boot that I will be using for the next couple of seasons. With putting them through a couple of interesting tests, we'll be doing a bit of sound, grip, and as well as a little bit of stylish tests too. We'll be putting them through extreme circumstances, put it that way. So to my left, I've got a Merrell boot. I think a couple of years ago when I bought this boot, it was named Safari boot, Merrell Safari boot. Beautiful boot, really comfortable, semi-waterproof. When I say semi-waterproof, I mean it's really semi-waterproof, and it's done a fantastic job. I bought these boots back in 2017, and they've held up pretty nicely with a lot of grip and stuff. I have used them for one whole season and a little bit more. Obviously, since I've got all the other ranges in, I was swapping them out from in and out, mainly using them on the more wet days going through. A new addition to the gear bag is the Morgan Chukka Vellies. This is a fantastic Vellie. I've been very surprised with the simplicity of it, but because of the simplicity, it's made it such a dynamic shoe to wear on safari. But we'll get into that a little bit later. And then last but not least, of course, we had to have the traditional, the well-known safari boot, the Courtneys. These, we went for the flat sole Courtneys and not the rugged Courtneys. Just purely, as we get into it, I'll explain my answer why. These are the safari. It's made out of buffalo leather. And we'll get into some of the accessories that are utilized with these boots, but for now, this will be the team we'll be going forward with and putting through their paces. So like mentioned, I just thought it would be only fair to introduce to you guys a little bit about the shoe, what I've discovered as far as pros and cons are concerned, and what makes this different to any one of the other 2 that I'll be testing, as well as any of the other shoes in the industry. Well, First of all, Merrell is a well-known brand throughout the world, and it's done a remarkable job in developing a really nice hiking boot. But unfortunately, that is exactly what it is. It's an extremely comfortable hiking boot for hikers. Not very good with noise under the foot. It comes with a bit of a rubber sole, so therefore there's a lot of echoing when you're walking over rocks and that sort of stuff. The grip is fantastic, as well as the ankle support is unbelievable. Like I mentioned a little bit earlier, they are semi-waterproof, therefore holding off the early morning dew or the early morning frost, drying up quite nicely. And a really special thing is the leather didn't get too hard. Normally what happens is when the leather gets wet, it goes into like this hard, undurable mode. These fortunately didn't have any of that. We do treat them with a little bit of leather cure, as well as coconut oil. I find works best with most of my leather products. And then last but not least, unfortunately, this is my third set of laces. So these little ridges where you clip the laces into, they tend to shear off a lot of laces throughout time, obviously utilizing them a lot, which for me is a big negative, because when you're out in the bush, you don't have a convenience store just down the road where you can go and purchase yourself a set of laces. So therefore, I find myself throughout pretty much in the worst case scenarios cutting off binding twine, trying to tie my boots together while I'm out in the veld, and it's not ideal, but that's what it is. Another con is that the tongue, as well as some of the scenarios around the edges here, are manufactured out of fabric. And now those of you in South Africa, we've just come out of a really bad drought, and there's a grass here that we call steekgras. Now it comes out with little barbs on, and they stick into, those of you, I'm sure you get them up north in special parts of Arizona and stuff. I remember when I played a bit of golf in Arizona, I walked through a set of grass and I said, well, this reminds me exactly of steekgras. So it comes in and it's an absolute pain to try and get it out. Most of the time you just land up throwing your socks away. So with intense scrubbing and intense cleaning, I managed to get as much of the steekgras out of these boots as possible. Unfortunately, every now and then when you do put your foot in, you do pick up a new spot where steekgras has managed to get through. So a very negative con in that aspect. Otherwise, as far as an all-round boot is concerned, if you're rifle hunting, I would definitely recommend these, especially if you're going up into the mountains after a fall rebuck, klipspringer, or dad, whatever the case may be. Really comfortable boot. Otherwise, if you're just a general hiker, these are stunning boots. They're really comfortable underfoot, and they can take a pounding. You'll see along the edges over here, I have got a bit of wear and tear. That's just due to all the rocks and stuff concerned. They've held out beautifully. These are, like I said, a season and a little bit old, and I can still see that I could maybe get another season out of them. Yeah, but as we go along, you guys will quickly figure out which is my favorite boot and why I'll be utilizing that a lot more. These will just be a nice little backup. Well guys, when it comes to traditional South African shoe, there's nothing more traditional than the Vellie, the Veldskoen. These were utilized in the Great Trek across South Africa by the Afrikaners, who manufactured these out of the leftover leathers made from saddles and stuff, and they developed the perfect Vellie. Well, I'm proud to say the guys from Morgan Leathers have developed one of the most ultimate Veldskoen I've ever come across. These have truly been a trip down memory lane, and definitely a trip into history. I mean, if there was ever a situation where you felt like you did a little bit of time traveling, these shoes would be it. And I can see why, and as I get into the details, you guys will understand a little bit more about it. A little bit of history behind this. I met Philip and Babette from Morgan Leathers up north, and their passion has definitely been involved into the shoe, and you can see it, you can feel it when you're out in the bush. You remember it because it is designed ultimately for the ultimate safari shoe, and I'm really proud of how far they've come. It's been an extraordinary experience wearing these shoes, which is pretty unique to me, especially somebody who's got a bit of a shoe fetish. To have something that captivates a story, to have something that takes you through the process, and to have something that really just reminds you of, number one, the past, and number two, just keep with every step you take, just takes you along the journey as these shoes get better and better. Well, some of the cons, fortunately, when you purchase a set of them, especially Philip, he recommends you dipping your foot into submerging the shoe completely into water so that it molds to your foot. And of course, I did that, and for the first 3 days it was unbearable. I got a lot of chafe, but thereafter, if not one of the most comfortable shoes in whole shoes I've ever worn, because it's designed now to my foot, which is pretty unique. And it's really, like I said, it's part of the experience, it's part of the process for these specific shoes. Not many other shoes give you such an experience, which is awesome. They've done an incredible job to give us high quality leather. I haven't cared for these as much as what I should have probably, but just goes to show the durability of them. I've taken them on a couple of hunts now. It's been a little bit over a season, and they've held out remarkably well. They still look like a brand new shoe. I love wearing these with jeans. They look really, really nice, and they build character as you go along, which is so unique. Being the high grade leather, every scratch, every ding, every little bit of drop of blood or kick of mud or whatever the case may be you get on these shoes is just another testament to the story that they can hold, which is really, really something special. Another positive of it is that I found with the gel sole, these shoes have been remarkably quiet in the bush, but we'll get into the test a little bit later. But truly, when I did a little bit of bar hunting up north now in KwaZulu-Natal after Red Darker, these shoes performed outstandingly. Really, as far as quiet is concerned, probably one of the best that I've ever come across. And because it's molded with your foot now, every step you take, every twig you feel underneath, it's just really become a special part of my gear bag. Like I said, one of the biggest things, one of the biggest motivations being a professional hunter, and what got me into this passion was that every single morning when I lace up my boots, I go back in time to the time that I shot my very first animal, and it was with my late father, and I run through that story every single day. Every single day I go out into the bush, and these shoes have almost become a part of that now, which is such a special experience. Being where they come from, being how they're made, being made with the passion that they have, and ultimately I think the guys from Morgan are onto something extremely special, yeah. Not only for the South African industry, but as well as for the world. Because to take home a part of history, to take home back to the States, back to the UK, a little part of Africa that you get to wear every single day is something very, very special. So some of the negatives, unfortunately, being around the edges here, we've had to doll these things up, especially when we're out in the bush, just so creepy crawlies and stuff don't get inside, because they do tend to, every now and then when you do bend down, they open up, which happens on majority of the boots, so it's not a massive problem. And then another issue which can be easily resolved is the guys from Morgan recommend that you wear these without socks, which is wonderful. I do agree. They don't smell. They've designed in such a unique way. Please, if you get a chance, go along to the website. You'll find out more about it. They're designed in such a unique way that they don't let off odor. They breathe well. They're really, really comfortable. Obviously, after being wet, like I said, they've been treated just as well as what the Merrills were. The leather is top quality, so you know, once you put them on, it feels like you're putting on a nice soft pair of shoes again, even if they get wet. So not wearing the socks situation here in the Eastern Cape, especially when the sun goes down, we get to about 1-2 degrees. That's probably about 32-33 degrees Fahrenheit. Your feet get a little bit cold, so throwing on a pair of socks is not always, it's not the biggest issue, but if there was ever a con to have, that's what it would be. So, Morgan leathers. Last but not least, of course, the famous safari boots, John Sharp's favorite, the Courtneys. Well, the Courtneys, it's been a dream of mine to own a pair, and I was very, very fortunate back in 2014 to be gifted a pair by one of the safari companies here in South Africa, which I did put to the test, and unfortunately they've succumbed to a lot of wear and tear in the past couple of years, so I had to retire them pretty soon. But I was very fortunate to have my second pair as well gifted to me by a client, and I must say I'm a little bit on the 50-50 side of how these guys have performed. I went with the flat soles this time, like I mentioned earlier. I had the more rugged soles. I went with the flat soles this time, hoping that they would be a little bit better underfoot as far as noise is concerned. And then my previous ones were made out of, they were just the solid tan buffalo hide. These are the two-tone buffalo hide tans. These are pretty good. It's been a lot of care, and how can I say, there's been a lot of maintenance done to them. I've had to restitch them a couple of times throughout the season. Just haven't held up as far as the stitching is concerned. So getting into the shoe, the pro of course is obviously the quality of the stitching. That well, not, you know, it's double stitched, but every now and then you get to a part where it feels a little bit flimsy and therefore takes a little bit more pounding, and that way you find I have restitched a lot of it. For instance, along the sides over here, that's all new stitching that we had to redo, just purely from the fact that I think because of all the polishing and because of all the care that we've put into them, that the stitching does take a little bit of a beating. Another con is that the width of the shoe doesn't hold, it's made to the width of the sole, so it doesn't hug your foot as much. So for me, there's a lot of movement, especially with somebody that's come back from a lot of rugby injuries and stuff. Your ankle gets a lot of movement in here, which is not always good, especially with the Eastern Cape terrain, a lot of round rocks, and you go up north into the Kalahari, a lot of the offsetting sand. So the terrain gets a little bit shaky underfoot, and therefore there's a lot of movement within the shoe. And then last but not, well, second last con is that of course the sole, being as smooth as it is, I feel like over time it gets worse and worse, especially in the longer grass. It's a little bit more slippery. And then last but not least, of course, like I mentioned, the care. These boots, once they get wet, the leather goes, like you can see, it's a very off color now. It takes a pretty intense polishing, cleaning to get it back to somewhat good quality looking shoe again, which is a little bit of a pain in the ass, especially when you're out in the bush. Being on safari, and yeah, you come up across those, there's not always time in the evening to get your boots polished. I know a lot of the older generation will be cringing at me saying that now, but it is just something that you have to face facts. You're entertaining until late hours in the evening, and then to get back and polish your shoe extensively to get it back to that shine is something you don't really want. However, the positive, of course, is the leather. It's very, very durable, and I'm sure the leather will hold out for a couple of seasons. They have managed to get a little bit of comfort into it, even though it's a solid sole, solid leather sole. Around the ankles there is a nice spongy cushion as well, and then they give you, included in purchasing a pair of these, you get included a little bit of leather treatment, a little bit of a brush and all that sort of stuff. So the Courtneys, however, were one of my top shoes. They slowly dwindled, but they have lasted a couple of seasons now, which I'm very, very fortunate about. And I just feel it's only fair to put them through the exact same test as what we were doing with the Bill Morgans and the Merrills. So that's the Courtneys. Hey guys, so one of the most important tests we can do today is of course the sound test. How quiet are these boots under extreme circumstances? So probably any hunter's worst enemy is a bunch of dry leaves as well as dry twigs. We're going to set up another camera, put the decibels on there as far as the sound is concerned, walk past, and then you guys at home can see which shoe performs the best and which one you would choose over any of the others. So without further ado, let's get into it. Hey guys, of course, okay, so the idea of this challenge is test the grip. So I've got the Bill Morgans on. We're going to head into this loose pile of ground, hasn't been compacted. At your ankles are a little bit greater than 30 degrees, and then kind of give you guys a feedback on where I'm feeling. Can I take the next step up? Do I feel secure underfoot? Is the grip playing a huge role here? And so on. So therefore, can I adjust my position comfortably? And that's ultimately how grip is sort of distinguished across many platforms, but as well as in hunting. I mean, you get down into difficult positions, especially trying to make a difficult shot, whether it be bow or rifle, and you need to make sure that your stability underfoot is in the correct position. So I'm going to go up here. At this point, I feel like I'm going to settle in. That's greater than 30 degrees. I feel good. I feel good under my toes. I feel like if I needed to right now make that next step up, I would be able to. But at this point, I feel good. I feel solid. It feels solid on the ground. The more I bounce around, I can feel like the ground is a little bit loose underneath me. But definitely to make my next step is crucial. So the Bill Morgans, surprisingly, and it's got to be due to the gel soles, hold up extremely well, especially under very loose conditions. So once again, guys, we've got the Courtneys on. We're going to go into the same sort of test as what we put the Bill Morgans through, and yet again trying to figure out whether we can make that transition into the next step. It's highly important, especially as a hunter, to make that next step. Is it a crucial one? Are we going to step on twigs? Does it improve my stalk? Does it improve the greater distance? A lot of times we have to go back to go forward. About the grip, when you're up in those mountains, there's only one way, and that's up, and that's forward. So yeah, testing the Courtneys. Okay, ready to settle down. Immediately as I stand here, I can feel a little bit of unsecureness underneath my left foot, and I feel if I had to lift my heel now on my left foot, I could have a very bad slip in a very awkward position. So, you know, normally I'm left foot strong, right foot step. In this situation, I feel more right foot strong, left foot step situation. So in this point right now, where the angle of my feet are, I do feel unsecure. I don't feel like I got a lot of traction. But like I said, if I take my right foot as a solid position and my left foot step, I feel better. But immediately there's already a sign of trying to slip underneath my foot. So just a small little bit of a crucial element over here that plays such a big role into your stalk, and it's something we've always got to keep in the back of our minds, and that's why gear is so important. So we got the Merrills on, and definitely straight off the bat, I feel like these guys are going to do the job. They're much more rugged sole compared to what we have been testing out. So for them to dig their lugs into this loose sand might just benefit the shoe going forward, might benefit you on your stalk taking that next step. So same principle, we get up to an angle just a little bit greater than 30 degrees and checking if we can make that forward step, that forward momentum, that forward movement. Let's take it out. Okay, so straight away I feel good. I feel good, and they really just they kind of like bite into the ground as I'm saying that. However, this is where it gets a little bit tricky. My feet are very uncomfortable. I can't feel them, and they feel like they're slipping in the shoe itself, which is a very awkward feeling. It's a very awkward feeling taking notice of it now, And when you're out in the bush and that adrenaline kind of kicks in, you don't really notice it too much. But now that you're noticing it, there's a lot of movement in the shoe itself, which is a little bit of a so having all this movement in the shoe, it's a bit of a concern, and we need to make sure that that doesn't play a negative role in progressing into the stalk. So right now I feel like I can step off any shoe, any foot, to make the next move, which is at ease, at comfort. Like I said, without that little bit of movement, these shoes definitely outperform the other two competitors, but not by much. The Bill Morgans held their ground pretty good. I could feel everything underneath, and yeah, we'll get into the closing a little bit later. Well guys, down to the final stage of this test is comfort. And comfort being one of the most important aspects in a shoe, in a boot, in a Vellie, whatever the case may be. Judging that, I can only judge it by the experience I've had over the past season. So I'm going to start with the Merrells. The Merrells were very, very fortunate. You can still see I've got a bit of the orange dust. Took them up north into the Kalahari, where we hunted lion, and tracking on tracks over there. I just felt the Merrells were a little bit soft underfoot. You needed the harder sole to give you that stability across the sand, but they did come with a little bit of added comfort on the inside. And another definite con was the heat that they generated. These being a more winter hiking boot, the heat that generated through the shoe was intense. And with gaiters on, I really struggled throughout the day to hold the heat off my feet, and I generate a lot of heat. So it was very uncomfortable for me. However, the leather does make it extremely durable. We are having a few slight issues now with the stitching at the moment. They've done me well for a season and a little bit. Like I said right at the beginning of this episode, with apart from all the cons, a really good all-round hiking boot. As far as a safari boot is concerned, I wouldn't go out there and invest my money in a shoe like this. Just closing it all off. It's got incredible grip, but that's more on the hiking side. It's pretty noisy underground, and as well as comfort, it holds its own, but it does get unbearable in certain heat conditions. And unfortunately, in most parts of South Africa and Africa alike, it is generally a hot terrain, hot sort of situation. So if you are, these are not the most ideal safari boots, and I wouldn't recommend them on your next safari. But yeah, as we go along, you guys will slowly pick up which one I prefer and which one I'm going to be using for majority of my hunting trips. And yeah, like I said, keep in mind the fabric with the steergras is even still, as I look at the boot now, there's still a little bit of steergras in there, but a good boot, but good for hiking. Next up, of course, took them as well up north to the Kalahari with me, and they did exceptionally well over there, being the solid sole that they are, very sturdy sole. They held over the sand conditions. Very nice shoe, very nice boot. Like I said, other than the stitching conditions, it's comfortable inside. There's a lot of space, but you do tend to slip around. So as far as comfort's concerned, it is there. And another big aspect as far as comfort is concerned is the weight of them. These boots are extremely heavy, and hiking or walking as many miles as what we have done, your feet do tend to drag a little bit as the safari progresses. Yeah. However, they are the flagship safari boot in South Africa. I slowly think that there are a lot of competitors coming up that are delivering on very good boots. I did mention Rogue. Unfortunately, they didn't quite make the cut. There are a couple of others out there that are delivering on a decent safari boot. But what I have here today, I feel is by far the best, the superior ones at the moment in the market. So the Courtneys, they pass if you are looking to spend this kind of money on a safari boot and get one that probably plays second best to the rest of the field, then by all means do it, and you will kind of have the name behind you. But however, for me personally as a professional hunter, this won't be something I'll be investing my money in any time soon, unless they have a drastic price drop. But a wonderful set of boots, really a significant part of the African experience. Then last but not least, and of course my shoe of choice, as far as comfort's concerned, with the gel soles, and of course doing the whole wet treatment, submerging your feet in the water, really getting them to mold to your foot, walking, going through the pain and the sacrifice, light, really healthy on your feet, and that's the right word I was looking for, is they're extremely healthy. They feel healthy for your foot. Your foot feels like it feels every nick and cravey, and it kind of rolls and sort of, you kind of feel one with nature. And I know I'm blowing it a little bit out of proportion, but they are really an exceptional shoe. I never thought that they would perform as well as they would, I'll be honest, but when I was in Natal, like I mentioned, just the silence of them and the way I could feel everything around me just made it something really special to be a part of. As far as comfort's concerned, they're a nice light boot. You can walk for kilometers in them, and I feel when I took them up to the Kalahari, they held up well into the sand. I did feel a bit of muscle tension that evening in different parts of my legs that I haven't felt before, but I kind of get the feeling that that's where the unused muscles in my feet kind of were, and so I didn't take that as a negative. And then of course, getting them wet, they're not waterproof, but getting them wet, they do get wet, they dry up pretty quickly, and you kind of walk them dry, which is pretty cool, instead of, like the Merrills mentioned before, semi-waterproof. As soon as they get wet, it's a very heavy boot to carry on walking with. They don't dry out as quickly as what these do. So an exceptional shoe, really something special. You wear them without socks, which is pretty cool, except when the temperature drops. I recommend you go and put a set of mohair socks on to try and keep your toes warm. But other than that, really an outstanding shoe. 3 pieces of leather. The stitching is done outstandingly, and if you have any issues, it's a case of putting them in a box, sending them back to Bell Morgan, and they handle any sort of issue right then and there. They're handcrafted. You're wearing a significant part of South African history. You're wearing Africa on your feet, and as well as you're keeping your foot as healthy as possible. A very special shoe. And I look forward to taking these forward in my next couple of safaris and my future adventures. Another small detail, they come with the laces. I think they wax coated, so the laces don't slip. I know they do look a little bit flimsy, but trust me, they don't slip, they don't come undone, especially if you're wearing gaiters, protects it. And yes, guys, if you are in the market, they're reasonably priced. If you have any questions on them, please hit me up or go and visit the website. I look forward to wearing these for the next couple of seasons, and yeah, Bell Morgan leathers. Well guys, that's it from me. Bell Morgan definitely gets the PH Journal stamp of approval. An incredible shoe, and really guys, if you want to take a piece of Africa back with you on your next safari, or if you're a professional hunter and you want to keep the tradition going, definitely get hold of Bell Morgan leathers for your Vellies today. PH stamp of approval. I'm about to take these guys out on my next bow hunting adventure. If you are, happy hunting. Until then, stay safe, stay blessed, stay humble. We'll catch up with you guys soon.